Here along with Ryan Talbot, and this is the Buffalo Bills Shout Football Podcast. Welcome into another live episode. We went live on Monday with a little mini cast. We are back with the full show on Wednesday night, and we're going to get this thing ramped up here. Training camp kind of started yesterday. It feels a little bit unofficial. We'll get this thing going in the next couple of weeks. But I wanted to bring in somebody that, not kissing up to him because he's on the show, but somebody I respect a ton who has covered the Bills for over 30 years in multiple roles at the Buffalo News. Mark Gaughan, my friend, welcome to the show. So glad to have you.
Well, thanks so much for having me. We're excited. Let's get going.
Let's get going. So obviously, training camp opened yesterday. The first few days are going to be testing, COVID-19 testing as players come in and out of the facility, going through the protocols. We've already had today, we've learned, Mark actually was the first to tweet it, that Vincent Taylor and Duke Williams have both been placed on the COVID-19 reserve list. That could mean they have the illness, or it could mean they've come in contact with somebody that has had it already. And I guess to start off with here, Mark, just, this process as it plays out here over the next couple days and the next 2 weeks. I mean, there's a real good chance that we're going to see, maybe some prominent players, not only in Buffalo, but across the NFL that land on this list.
Absolutely. By my count, there are 49 right now on the list. There were 19 today, 8 yesterday, 18 on Monday. I think the 18 were all the rookies and guys who reported last week. So now, but then as of last night, the NFLPA's number was 21 people had actually have the COVID.
Right.
So that's 49 who either have it or have been in contact. NFLPA said 21. So it's uncharted territory. Honestly, your guess is as good as mine. It's going to be a strange season, just like it's been a strange year for all of us in all of our lives, and we'll see how it goes. I'm guardedly optimistic they're going to get to week one, and play week one. And I'm kind of, like everybody, hopeful that it can carry on. I mean, the NBA, granted, they're in a different situation. They've been in a bubble, but, they've been doing well. The NHL, the English Premier League, pulled it off. Obviously, totally different sport. I get it and all that, but we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Obviously one of the toughest challenges that the NFL faces is once this thing makes its way into a locker room, because we haven't actually gotten to the period where these guys are going to really be around each other all the time. They've been practicing. If you follow Joe Kroom, photographer extraordinaire on social media, you'll notice that even in Buffalo, since the Florida workout and the Virginia workout for the defense, guys have gotten to town. They've been working out together over at Cleve Hill, getting in some work. So they've been around each other. But as we get into, the practices and in the facility, once this thing kind of gets in there, I think that's when the problem can really surface. We've seen it with the Marlins now in baseball. And, the craziest thing for me to kind of envision is what this thing is going to look like if, say, a handful of guys get it and they're not able to find that out before a Sunday game, and this thing just runs rampant in 2 locker rooms.
Yeah, you could imagine any scenario. You could imagine the competitive balance really changing, a team getting lucky and playing a team that is playing with 16 practice squad players on a given week. It's all so speculative. I mean, I think that based on what we're seeing, that I don't think they're going to have any problem before they start padded practices, because not much of a problem, because they're still going to do a lot of meetings virtually, and the locker rooms have all the spacing, everything's spaced out, and they got plexiglass everywhere. So, but when the offensive line and the defensive line start, getting in close contact, now they're going to wear I presume most of the players are going to wear that face guard over underneath their face mask to further kind of protect from having too much. Again, we're just going to be. We'll just have to react week to week as it goes on. Right now, who knows?
One thing that you mentioned was the 16-man practice squad. And something that I found interesting is the fact that they're looking into having 4 protected players this year. Now, details have not emerged on whether those 4 players have to pass waivers initially, because that could complicate things.
I don't think so.
I don't
my
either.
Impression is no, but I don't. But keep going.
So, in Buffalo's case, could that benefit them when you look at a Jake Fromm, someone that you almost thought had to make the 53-man roster, even a kicker like Tyler Bass, who you thought, well, he probably had the edge over a guy like Hauschka, but now if you could have him protected and on that practice squad and don't have to worry about losing him or Fromm, is that something that could work to Buffalo's competitive balance when it comes down to making that final roster?
Yes, the short answer is yes. We can get into the Hauschka Bass. I reject your suggestion that Bass has the edge on Hauschka to go in. We can talk about that, but absolutely. I mean, I think you look at any rookie. Everybody's in the same boat. Let's presume it's a relatively normal training camp for most teams. Then I would say, absolutely, Fromm could probably get through waivers. He's gonna have nobody's playbook. You know what I mean? He's had no spring practices, barely had any preseason. They've got a limited number of practices. Who's getting all the reps? Josh Allen. Jake Fromm, let's face it, isn't going to get near. Is going to come out of this on September 6th with a fraction of the reps he would have got under a normal last season. Same with all rookies. I think rookies are going to be pushed to the background. I think most rookies are going to be an afterthought to start the season if we have a normal training camp. Now let's say you've got a team that loses 2 quarterbacks or has 2 quarterbacks on COVID. Now, okay, maybe you can't get Jake Fromm through, but nobody's going to want to play Jake Fromm in the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season, or at all. Or any rookie quarterback. Obviously, Joe Burrow's going to start, but you got to feel for that guy. He's going to get a fraction of the reps that he would have that any other rookie has ever gotten.
100%. I think that, going into this offseason scenario, we could jump ahead a little bit here. I want to talk about position battles as we get further, and I put it at the end, but I think the running back situation is an area where a rookie, I think that Zach Moss probably within the fan base expectations might be highest for him. And so he's coming in here in a situation where there's some snaps available to him, most likely, if he's able to win that number 2 job. But, I'm still kind of on the fence. I think that they like TJ Yeldon. I know a lot of Bills fans don't agree with me on this, but I think that they like TJ Yeldon. There's a trust factor. And I think that Zach Moss, as you mentioned, as a rookie and without the reps in practice, has a lot of work to do to assume the role that I think a lot of fans are hoping he's going to assume.
I agree with everything you said, and I think especially blitz pickup, it's going to hurt Moss. This definitely helps Yeldon, this whole crazy year we're having. I think I like Moss. I liked Moss before the draft. I wrote about him, tweeted about him, so it's out there. I see Moss being I see Moss having a big role. Mm-hmm. Moss is 225, Singletary's 203. I don't see them pounding Singletary on a lot of short yardage situations. Mm-hmm. I think Moss is going to be a factor. I think running back is an easier position to work into the lineup, not counting third downs. I think Moss is going to be a factor. If it was a normal training camp, I think it was going to be a 60-40 split Singletary Moss. And I think next year down the road, Moss is going to play a lot. Moss is going to be a 40-45% guy to Singletary's 60-55, in my opinion. Now, this year, how is it going to work? It's a little iffy, but I don't see them running Singletary and his 203 pounds into the ground.
Mm-hmm. We are going to get into all types of training camp battle chatter, what this thing's going to look like over the next few weeks and going into the season. But before we go any further, I want to talk a little bit about you. Maybe anybody watching that's not familiar. You've been at the Buffalo News now for 37 years. Am I correct? Right. I'm not trying to age you.
Yeah.
But
that's okay.
There's a lot of wisdom. And one of the cool things about, just the whole year round, but something that I've been missing is just being able to chat with some of my peers, whether it be in the media room, in the hallways as we're waiting to get into practice, out at practice. And we've had some really great conversations in my 2 years being back here. And so tell people a little bit about, where you've kind of gone. You covered college for a little while, but kind of how your career has kind of gone here.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm incredibly lucky. I was born and raised in Buffalo. So, and Buffalo's the kind of place where if you have a decent job, the quality of life here is great. You can't beat it. Mm-hmm. I'm like, right, we don't get into traffic jams. If you got an 8-hour-a-day job, you work 8 hours and 40 minutes. 20 minutes to work and 20 minutes home. It's not 11 hours, So, I'm a big Buffalo booster. And so I've been at the Buffalo News all but 1 year of my career, since 1984. And I've covered the Bills, started covering the Bills some in 88 and have been on them, traveling with them, started traveling to road games in 92. And I've been on them, straight through. I took a 3-year hiatus in 15, 16, and 17 to cover college sports, to kind of recharge, refresh. I still covered Bills games those 3 years, but not anything else. And now I'm back. I do since 18, 19, I've been on Bills full time almost every day of the year. I might do 5 days of the year something else, and I do during the season. I focus a little more on analytics and use kind of numbers as a jumping off point to illustrate trends and where the team is going and the league.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you haven't caught it, I would say that the Buffalo News subscription fee is worth it just for Mark's, film work and analytics. It's great stuff over there, always keeping everybody informed. Now, 12 years you spent as a Pro Football Hall of Fame voting member, am I correct?
Correct.
And explain a little bit the situation this year, because we got, no Hall of Fame game now. That everything going on around the Hall of Fame is a little bit weird with coronavirus.
Right. Well, this was the 100th anniversary year, so they expanded the class, which was a somewhat controversial move, but it was a way to kind of lessen the backlog of older players. So it was a giant class this year, and now there won't be any ceremony, and then they'll still have a vote They'll still have a meeting and a vote at the Super Bowl, or whenever the Super Bowl would be in early February, for another class. So they're going to have a couple weeks. They're going to have to do a 2 or 3 week celebration in the summer of 2021 to enshrine all these guys who've gotten in.
Awesome. All right, let us move on to football, because that's what we got you here for. If you're just joining us now on our Facebook page and our YouTube page, we're able to simulcast now. We're so excited to hit both audiences. This is the Shout Football Podcast live edition Wednesday night. I'm Matt Perino. He's Ryan Talbot. He is Mark Gaughan from the Buffalo News. And we got our first kind of big piece of news yesterday with Star Lotulelei becoming the first Buffalo Bills player to opt out of the 2020 season. And we can get into maybe why he made this decision, why we think he made this decision, why a lot of players are making this decision. John Feliciano sent out a tweet yesterday that I thought was pretty appropriate. But I wanted to get your first thoughts here. This was a defensive line that, added some depth after losing a couple pieces and was poised to be one of the strengths of this team. Where do you see things starting off here now without Star Lotulelei in the situation for this D-line?
Well, it's a big loss. He's a starting player for a reason, because they trust him to be a starting player. If you had to take a starting player out of a position group, D-line would be the position group. I was thinking going in, if everybody's healthy, they keep 9 guys typically, and they have 10 proven guys, and that doesn't count Vincent Taylor. Mm-hmm. So there was going to be a problem if everybody stayed healthy. So they still it's still a very deep group and a good group. I think there's no question. I mean, Star is the starter for a reason. They trust him. He knows the system, and he is an underrated space eater. He played 49% of the snaps last year. And I was going to envision him playing 45-ish, 40 to 45-ish this year. So now without him, their run defense was, they were good at getting teams into third down. They were 10th against the run, 18th in yards per attempt against the run last year. But the run defense was good. Mm-hmm. And now it's Vernon Butler, who they signed from Carolina, who again knows the system, super talented, former number 1 draft choice. It's him and Harrison Phillips. Harrison Phillips, as we all know, started off the season great the first couple of games last year, tore up his knee. Is he going to be, to start the season, where he was last year to start the season? I kind of think probably not. Mm. I think Vernon Butler is going to have to step. They're counting on Vernon Butler to step up in a big way, and he is a super talented guy, and we'll see. But, I mean, obviously he does not have the credentials as a run-plugging one technique defensive tackle over the nose, over the shaded over the shoulder of the center. He does not have as good a track record as Star. Mm-hmm. He's probably as talented as Star, though.
Right. I wanted to ask you about specifically how they're going to approach this, because if you go back to last season, you take the Bills. First of all, Vernon Butler, he started off his career backing up Star Lotulelei in Carolina, which is good from a one technique perspective. He's played it for a few years. If you go back to the Bills last year, they had Jordan Phillips in that starting 3-tech role. But if you go back and watch a lot of the tape, when he's not in that 3-tech role, when Star's not on the field, they had Jordan almost fill in that 1-tech spot. And I feel like that's where Vernon Butler kind of was going to fit. He was kind of more of that multifaceted player, can play 1, can play 3, can rush the passer. Now, I almost think you're going to, unless Harrison Phillips is 100%, you're going to ask Vernon Butler to be that 49-50% 1-tech guy. Is that possible? Is that where he's going to excel? Because he had 6 sacks last season.
That is a really good question. And it's sort of like 2-part question. One is, we're talking about the base, where they really needed Star, or where he's really a huge asset, is base defense or first down, mm-hmm. regular sit down and distance situations. Third down, so I mean, Jordan Phillips, granted, he did play sub in on regular down on 1st and 10 for Star too, but then he saw his other 1 technique snaps in sub packages for Star, because Star doesn't play a lot of third downs. Anyway, so what they really need is 30% of those Star snaps on first downs are against 2 back or 2 tight end sets. Who's playing that 1 technique at a high level? Mm-hmm. And that's the key. That's the key. And it's going to have to be a combination of Butler, Phillips, and now if Phillips, let's say they go through practices and Phillips doesn't feel like he's totally 100%, that's where Vincent Taylor, maybe they decide they got to keep a 5th defensive tackle. You really wouldn't want to do that normally, but maybe they decide they have to do that, and Vincent Taylor gets snaps who just landed on the COVID list.
Right.
But Vincent Taylor, you could envision, if Harrison, if they feel he's not totally 100% on September 13th, maybe they got to keep Vincent Taylor and have a 3-person mix at that one technique to start the season.
Should the Bills consider looking into free agency for a run stopper? There's a guy like Damon Harrison available. Now, I see you shaking your head. No, but he is that guy that over the course of his career, though, has been great at that specific part of the game in terms of stopping the run.
And no, they're already too deep. My opinion is that no, they're already too. They already got a numbers problem still. So, in other words, you're talking about defensive ends: Hughes, Murphy, Addison, Epinesa, Daryl Johnson. That's 5, and you'd really like to keep those 5, in my opinion. I don't see them cutting Trent Murphy. So that's 5, and I don't think you want to give up on Daryl Johnson. So that's 5. Normally you keep 9. So it's Oliver, Butler, Quentin Jefferson, Harrison Phillips. They're locks. That's 9. Vincent Taylor would be the 10th. So, I think if Phillips is reasonably healthy, they should be fine between Butler and Phillips, and maybe Vincent Taylor.
Buffalo so far has only been hit with the Lotulelei news. One team within the division, though, that has been hit pretty significantly is the New England Patriots. So they already lost 2 of their starting linebackers in free agency, and now they lose Hightower. They lose a key member of their secondary in Patrick Chung, and even an offensive lineman starter in Marcus Cannon. At this point, and maybe you already viewed the Bills as the favorite in the division, but at this point, should the Bills be the favorite after all of these losses now that the Patriots have gone through, and thinking that maybe there'll still be a few more added onto that list?
Yes.
Okay, short and sweet. I like it. I like it.
I mean, that's a load of losses. That's huge losses for New England. Absolutely. I mean, now is Bill Belichick going to fall apart with that team? No, nobody thinks that. But I mean, their defense was already taking a hit. Losing Van Noy was a big loss for them. They lost to Landon Roberts, right? Yep. A key role player now. I mean, they can replace him, and they'll piece it together. I mean, but they're going to have to try to win games 17-14. And their defense isn't what it was last year. Now, the rookie safety, who they drafted in the second round, he's going to have to start and play for Chung. But Chung is so reliable. That's asking a rookie to step into that defense and be assignment of sound. It's really tough. They got problems. They have problems.
It's a great point. They got problems on both sides of the ball, I think. They didn't add...
And you look at their depth. Check out their depth on the offensive line. Check out their depth chart.
Mm-hmm.
And their starting 5 on the O-line is good.
Right. Well, was good. And now they took the hit right tackle.
Right. Now, if they get a couple injuries, their depth is shaky on offense. Their depth on offense is really shaky.
We mentioned it earlier when we were talking about COVID. They're going to start. There's a little bit of a back thing there. Starting off, we're talking about Cam Newton in his role as quarterback now. He's going to get about a month and a half to get up to speed for the Patriots, and then boom, in September, start playing games. And so what is your expectations for what this offense for the Patriots is going to look like without Tom Brady? Or is it anybody's guess, I guess?
I think they're going to run their offense. I think that Newton, if you see what he did last year, he kind of wasn't the deep downfield, all play action, deep downfield thrower. He was more of a distributor from the pocket and was doing pretty well. Granted, he had McCaffrey. I think, and they do have some experience running this offense with running a Jacoby Brissett offense.
Mm-hmm.
And Cam Newton can do the things that they did with Jacoby Brissett, only better. But their passing game, Edelman, Mohamed Sanu, N'Keal Harry. That's Matt Lacoste as a tight end. And then they got 2 rookies at tight end. James White is going to catch a ton of passes. James White's going to be like a receiver for them. So, the one thing about the Patriots is they won't ask Newton to do what he can't do. And if things are going wrong, they'll adjust and they'll get the most out of their talent. But their talent, come on. It's not a top 4 talent in the AFC, not a top 5 talent.
Mm-hmm. Back to the Bills here, and I want to talk a little bit about the position battles. And I apologize if you guys are getting this reverberation that I'm getting in my headphones, but we always seem to have one of these little technical issues each show. I want to talk a little bit about the position battles, and there's 2 specifically, and then we'll talk about maybe any other ones that we're anticipating for camp. One, I think the marquee position battle that I think that everybody has an opinion on right now, it seems, but I don't think anybody is convinced wholeheartedly who is going to be cornerback number 2 opposite Tre'Davious White. The Bills brought in Josh Norman this offseason. We've talked quite a bit about Josh Norman on the show over the last couple months, and he's going to go up against Levi Wallace. Obviously, E.J. Gaines is still in the mix here. He started for the Bills in 2017, can't stay healthy, so he's kind of maybe a dark horse, but he'll be somebody that gets into camp, knows the system. Where do you just starting off here, is it Levi's job to lose like it was last year, or do you feel like Josh Norman comes in here and takes those first-team reps pretty early?
I think it's Levi's job to lose, but it's tenuous. Obviously, they replaced Levi. Levi started losing snaps to Kevin Johnson last year, but he still held on. He still got more of the snaps. Mm-hmm. Then he was hurt for the playoff game in Houston. Because he got hurt in the regular season finale against the Jets. I think it's going to be a tough. I think you're going to see roster shakeups weeks 3, 4, 5, 6, league wide, just because you can't tell. practice. Granted, the coaches can tell things from practice, and yes, they can put Norman, line up Norman and Levi across from Stephon Diggs and see who does better. They'll be able to tell if Josh Norman has fallen off the cliff or if he hasn't. It's not, practice is not game situation, and I think it's going to be a job share among those guys. I don't expect I think they'll look reasonable. There's no preseason games. I think it's going to be a job share to start the season and then see who earns it by week 3, 4, 5, 6. And I think that's the way teams are going to approach it across the league, with a lot of even-ish jobs. And it's going to be a work in progress. Rookies aren't going to get a lot of snaps like somebody like Gabe Davis. I don't see him getting, barring injury, many snaps. They'll work him in. If he's starting to look good in practice, they'll work him in a little bit, a month into the season. I think that's the way it's going to go with most rookies on most teams. The answer, the long-winded answer is I see a job share the first 3 or 4 weeks between Levi and Norman.
Okay, so I'm going to go with Gaines real quick. If he can stay healthy, and that's a huge if.
Right.
Based on what we saw out of 2017, based on the fact that the Bills brought him back last year and he didn't play, and they brought him back again this year, they clearly at least like the guy. They want to see what they can get out of him. If he is healthy, at least, from what we saw out of those games in 2017, how much noise can he make in the competition?
Well, he's got a big leg up, and then he can play the slot and outside. So, I see him being valuable if he's healthy. If he makes through healthy, I see him being valuable because he'd be a good backup to Teron Johnson. Gaines is faster than Levi or Josh Norman. In fact, Josh Norman's speed has never been Josh Norman. He was a 4.62 guy or something coming into the league. 4.66. Levi was 4.62, something like that. And E.J. Gaines is a 4.51 guy, but he's not as long, not as heavy, not as long. Levi and Norman have really long arms for the position, which the Bills really like. So, yeah, I'm just going to say I think it's going to be a job share between Levi and Norman for the opener. That Gaines is going to be there as a valuable depth, and even if without COVID, cornerbacks go down. You need depth. You could look at any key Bills season, and they've needed guys to fill in. Corners go down with calf tweaks and slightly turned ankles, and you're gonna need to be 6 deep at corner somewhere along the way.
Another intriguing battle on this roster is at the kicker position, Stephen Hauschka versus Tyler Bass. What does Tyler Bass have to do in this very short training camp to prove that he's the man for the job?
I think he needs to have a near perfect field goal kicking performance in practice. He needs to be unbelievably sensational. We might not even see it. We won't see it all because a lot of times they take the kickers into the stadium. I think it would take a crazy, ridiculous, or a slumping performance in practice by Hauschka for Bass. Otherwise, I see Hauschka doing it. I see them being they don't want to take gambles with that position. I don't think. Now, I mean, obviously they did draft him for a reason, but you look at what some of the other things they've done on special teams. They went out and got from Pittsburgh Matzekevich, who's a special teamer, and they went out and got Tywan Jones. I think both those guys are going to make the team because they want their special teams to be rock solid. And I don't see them rolling the dice with a rookie kicker to start the season. Hauschka did have struggles in midseason, but down the stretch, granted, after he missed one, I think my memory might be failing. In the first half, he missed one in Dallas.
Yeah, the first kick.
Extra point or a field goal.
The field goal and an extra point.
Right, but then from the second half in Dallas, now again, people will be laughing right now. From the second half in Dallas on, he didn't miss. Right. He was super solid, and he made a true grit 47-yarder at the buzzer in regulation in Houston to send it into overtime, which should have been a winning kick.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because they should have won it in overtime because there was 8 different plays, which we don't need to go into, where they should have won that game.
Right.
So that was just a Iceman kick. That was a great kick at the end of regulation in Houston. So I see Hauschka being the man. It's a perfect year to use Bass on your practice squad and have him kick off, for touchback, activate him maybe if you're got a healthy week. Activate him to the 55 as one of the 2 guys. The other guy's an offensive lineman to go from 53 to 55. Let him kick touchbacks. I think that's what's going to happen.
And to your point, you can almost use that expanded practice squad to house him and then protect him. And then to your point earlier, if 3-4 weeks go by and you're like, okay, we what we feared is true and Hauschka isn't the guy going forward, you can make the change then, which I think a lot of teams, like you said, are going to look very different come mid-season than they do starting off.
I like Hauschka. He is going to be fine. Fine. Go to sleep tonight. Don't even think about it.
And he's only 35, too. I think people forget about that. Like, he's not.
Kickers have long longevity. I just think he's going to be fine. And I don't see them taking chances. I see them wanting to be protective, safe, on special teams.
Is there a position battle is there any potential for a position battle on the offensive line in your eyes? I think that they signed Darrell Williams to try to push somewhere, but I keep going over and over it again in my mind, and I just don't see where he's really going to put himself in a position, especially in this scenario, to win a job. I think we're walking in week 1 with the same 5 they walked off the field in Houston with.
Absolutely. And again, you're talking practice. It's like it's going to be hard for a veteran to fall on his face when they're not even having padded practices till August 17th,
right?
Or 18th. I just don't see it. Again, if you, for the Bills or any team, if you think you've got some shaky problems, problem positions, it's going to sort itself out. Whereas normally some of those would have gotten sorted out before September 13th. Now more things are going to get sorted out week 3, week 4, week 5. So, it's going to be the same 5 to start the season, barring injury.
Anywhere else on the roster where you're really interested to see how things play out? I know that there's some potential for some battles at depth linebacker and depth receiver. Where do you feel like there's real potential for maybe a wild card or a sleeper to emerge as somebody that makes this 53-man roster?
Well, keeping in mind that it's that it's our job to be interested in every battle. There's a lot of interesting battles. The receiver, and again, I think all of these battles obviously the Bills, for the starting lineup, this is the most set starting lineup the Bills have had in forever. Okay. Even without Star, you know what I mean? It's crazy, but you're 2 bad COVID days of testing away from shuffling the deck. So I think it's all important. The 43rd to the 55th spots on the team are going to be extremely important. I believe, because it's going to be a crazy year. So receiver, you've got 5 locks. There's 3 starters, Roberts and Gabriel Davis, the 4th round pick. Mm-hmm. They're locks. So who's making it as the 6th receiver? Duke Williams, Isaiah McKenzie, Robert Foster, Isaiah Hodgins. That's wide open.
Mm-hmm. And it's 6 no matter what. Is there a scenario where they think 7?
I think so. Or if they got a lot of injury problems, it could even be 5 and throw other people. They could go with 5, but I think it's 6. Tight end is interesting. Everybody's sort of expecting Dawson Knox to take the next step. And again, this is one of those, let's sort it out week 2, 3, 4. But it's huge for Dawson Knox. Tyler Kroft, Lee Smith, Tommy Sweeney. Can they afford to keep Lee Smith on the roster again? Can they afford to keep both Lee Smith and Patrick DeMarco? We'll see. I think DeMarco is safe, but Lee Smith is. Do you really need 4 tight ends if Sweeney is healthy and ready to be the number 3 tight end? I'm interested to watch the rotations on defensive line. Mm-hmm. They got so many ways to mix and match. I'll be really interested to see that. I think it's going to be Murphy, spelled by Epinesa, at left defensive end. I think Addison is going to see most of his work at right defensive end, but because that's where he played. Both he and Jerry played like 90+% at right defensive end.
Right.
So Jerry's going to be able to stay healthier, but I see them. I think it's Murphy and Epinesa at left defensive end in the base defense.
I don't know if Brandon misspoke, but I was going back and reading some of his transcript from after the draft, and he said that he thinks that Mario at times too can push inside, which I thought was interesting because you're right. He's played predominantly at defensive end, but to your point, you're talking about if Mario can go inside, Jefferson plays edge and tackle, and Epinesa, which I want to see what Epinesa can do against interior NFL offensive linemen, especially early on, before I'm convinced they can use him there consistently.
I think they definitely can use him there limited, I mean, but the issue is edge. They got loads. They got a million guys who can rush from defensive tackle.
Mm-hmm.
It's the edge, the impact edge position that they need. So, I mean, yeah, Addison can play rush inside, and they're great about manufacturing 5-man rushes by moving guys around and having Oliver twist and come from the edge. But no, I see Addison. They need him on the edge. So they got enough. Jefferson, I think, can rush from outside or inside. But I see Addison being on when it's a tie game in the fourth quarter and everybody's fresh. You probably want Jerry and Addison rushing from the edge, right?
Exactly.
So backup
linebacker. Houston version of Trent Murphy splashed in there.
Yeah. That one went over my head. What do you mean by that?
He showed up.
Yeah,
he showed up. He had
a
few sacks. He was pretty consistent.
Yes. Okay. Backup linebacker. I mean, that's probably the most questionable depth spot on the team. They're set with with Milano and Edmonds, but if one of those guys goes down with a high ankle sprain for 4 weeks, what happens?
Well, in Edmonds' case, it seems to be that they must have some belief in Tyler Matzekevich, who I don't know where I was listening. It might have been a podcast or I might have been reading a story. He's a guy that obviously was the backup middle linebacker in Pittsburgh, never really got a chance to play, and thinks he'd be a little bit more effective than people give him credit for in that role. Now, you're like we saw, I think it was in 2018, Edmonds goes down. You're not replacing what he brings from an athleticism perspective and just an understanding of running that side of the ball. So You're right. To your point, if you leave either of those guys, especially Edmonds, it's going to be bad news. Right.
And then so I'm interested to watch practice and see how, like, two young guys, Voshan Joseph and the safety from Gaughan Johnson. I want to see how will they take a step up in year 2. Johnson had a pretty good regular season finale against the Jets last year.
Yeah.
But I mean, really, in a perfect world, they're not playing. They're not getting any playing time.
Cool. All right, so we've gone 40 minutes without talking about Josh Allen or this offense, really, other than the receivers. And I think that's a good place to really head out of this episode end this episode with a bang. So, there's been so much discussion. I mean, we had a whole show on him the other day after he was voted number 87 in the NFL's top 100 list. Kind of irrelevant. I just want to talk about, what are your expectations for Josh and where you think he can grow with now the addition of Diggs, year 3 in this offense? And do you expect, or is this even needed, for the training wheels to be taken off a little bit, from a Brian Daboll perspective and just, maybe even a Sean McDermott perspective? Because I still think the identity of this offense at times really seems to me to have that Sean McDermott fingerprint on it.
That's very perceptive point. I agree with that too. They had, the defense in 2018 had the worst starting field position in the NFL, even though they were number 2 or 3 overall in 2018. But they had the worst starting position. And Sean McDermott didn't like that. Now, turnovers were a big reason, obviously. So last year, it got way better. They were top 5 or something. And that's because Josh Allen didn't turn the ball over. And when you also look at some of their run rates, running the ball on early downs, running the ball with the lead, they had like one of the highest percentage of running the ball with the lead. That says to me training wheels on Josh. They're being safe. And they're being smart. They're playing to the strength of their defense. Obviously, if you're playing Denver and they're starting a rookie quarterback in his first road start of his life, and you've got a 7-point lead, and you got the number 2 defense in the league, and you're saying, Sean McDermott's saying we can play till Tuesday, and they're not going to score on us. Okay, so yeah, you're going to have training wheels on, right? Because you're playing smart situational football. This year, tougher schedule. They're going to have to open up in some of those situations. I don't think they're going to be able to play as safe. You think of some of those games in Pittsburgh. I mean, granted, they wanted to pull the horns in because of those 2 monster edge rushers. Now, that was the huge factor. But, again, Leslie Flazier's saying, Duck Hodges, we could play till, Tuesday. He's not scoring on us, right? We're not worried. I mean, unless we really, hand him the ball on our end of the field. So that has a huge factor on how you call plays. And that's I totally agree with the premise of your question. This year, I think they're going to have to open it up a little more out of necessity because they're going to have, they're going to be playing Jimmy Garoppolo or Ben Roethlisberger and not Duck Hodges in some of these games. So this is a long-winded way of going back to Josh Allen. We can talk about this every day from now, and we will. I don't think the floor is high, is gotten higher for Josh. In other words, with the offense around him, it's going to be hard for him to collapse, right? I mean, he's going to get a little better, his numbers. The question is, can he take full advantage? And I think the number one thing everybody wants to see is better deep accuracy. And if he can do that, now everything will start working better because now, okay, like last year, okay, Belichick, you're defending the Bills. Okay, what are you going to do? Let's put a safety over the top of John Brown, keep him from going deep. And, Cole Beasley's going to catch some little underneath throws, but force Josh Allen to say, where are you going with the ball? Okay, you want to throw to rookie Dawson Knox? Fine. Good luck. Go ahead. See if you can beat us that way. This year, if they want to, you've got 2 threats on the outside with Diggs and John Brown. So it's not as easy. And if teams want to play too deep, hey, the running game and the underneath passes should be there. If they want to play more man coverage like New England did, great. We got one of the best man beaters in the league in Stephon Diggs. So that all should be helpful. If Josh Allen is 32nd in the league in throwing 20 plus yards downfield like he was last year, that's a problem. So it'll be interesting to see his mechanics when the real games start. And if they hit a few deep passes the first 3 or 4 weeks, that should be gold for this offense.
Have you watched a bunch of Diggs since the deal? Like, have you gone back and watched some of them?
Yeah, some. Yeah, I mean, 4 or 5 games. Yep.
So one of my big something I wasn't really in tune with before I went back and watched him, I was so impressed watching a couple of his games last year, the year before, at how physical of a player he is. And I think that that's one area that was missing with John Brown last year. As great as he wasn't going to fight for any of that yak yardage. He wasn't a real threat after he caught the football to break one. I feel like at times I noticed that Stephon Diggs almost seeks out contact. He offers a different flavor of number one and allows John to be that elite number 2, which I've always believed is where his true fit is. You go back to his Larry Fitzgerald year. I mean, he ate in that offense. So now, does that fit in with what Josh, where he's good? Because you saw that intermediate area where he got much more proficient last year. Do you think that that's an area where Stephon Diggs is going to really add another dimension? Or do you think it's going to be in that deep ball where he finally can, get past defenses and maybe Josh can beat down the field?
No, I mean, I totally agree with what you said. He plays a lot bigger. He's not a huge guy, but he plays big. He's got really strong hands. He's got a good catch radius. He plays big. He gets quick early separation. I think Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott deserve a tremendous amount of credit for adjusting last year after the 2018 season. Mm-hmm. And Beasley and John Brown, this is something Mark Kelso used to talk about all the time. Get separation early in the down so that a young quarterback sees it early and is confident that's where I'm going, which helps his accuracy. And even, like I was thinking even a play in the Houston game where it was just like a 12-yard hitch. And the cornerback for Houston was so far back. And, John Brown, great route runner, doesn't give up, sells the route, stops. I mean, when he caught the ball, there was still like a 9-yard cushion. So that helps that switch in getting Brown and Beasley quick separation guys was a brilliant move by Beane and his staff and McDermott. And now with, I think, Diggs, he's another guy who can get separation early in the down, and Josh can be confident that he can pull the trigger. So, I mean, it's not just going to help. It's going to help underneath and deep. And I think the Bills are going to be harder to lock up in man coverage. Now, granted, if they're going to play like Baltimore's defense, played man, blitzed the heck out of it. I mean, they're a tough defense to face. I mean, it's going to be a tough game. Bills don't play Baltimore in the regular season, but the Patriots too. They got great defensive backs. It's going to be, there's going to be tough games, but I think Diggs helps at every level.
Awesome stuff. All right, guys, this was an awesome show. Great way to get us started here as we tiptoe our way into this very unusual training camp. Mark, thank you so much for joining us. Why don't you let everybody know where they can find you, your work, and what you guys got going on over at the Buffalo News?
Yeah, well, we're at buffalonews.com, and I'm on Twitter at GGGaughan, going, GGGaughan.
Beautiful, beautiful. He is Ryan Talbot. Send us out of here with something, Ryan. I always close the show, but I feel like we need a little bit more Ryan Talbot in our lives.
Oh, putting me on the spot. All right, yeah. Well, thanks again, everyone, for following. If you haven't already, head to all the major podcast sites, leave a review, let us know your thoughts. Thanks for following us as always.
Beautiful, beautiful stuff. And we'll see you next week. We got another very special guest, somebody that Mark is very familiar with, Mr. Joe Biscaglia from The Athletic. He'll join us next Wednesday. We'll have another killer show. Mark, thanks so much, and everybody have a great night.
Can't wait to see you out at one of these days soon in Orchard Park, hopefully.
Yep, fingers crossed.